Hello and welcome. I bring to you tidings. Tidings of scams. Background. This is all about graded comic books. So if you don't know what a graded book is, that's where you take a comic book. Like, let's click over here. Elgato. Like, let's say I wanted to get this Marvel free preview book graded. I would take this book, package it up in a Gemini mailer, ship that off to some dude. That dude would then get the book out. He'd supposedly go over every page, making sure every page was immaculate, or not, noting any weird damages. Then when he got to the end, he'd be like, yeah, see, the color has faded very slightly on this one edge right here. That makes this a 9.6. And then he would take that book, he'd put it in a big plastic slab, and then they'd ship it back to me. The whole process cost used to be like $30. Now it's probably like $50 or $80 or something. Inflation's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So now every step of that process depends upon one thing. That thing is trust. One, you trust that the mail carrier gets it there. Two, you trust that he's grading your book fairly. Three, you trust that the book that you sent is the one that's actually getting graded and not some inferior copy that they're substituting so they can steal your better looking book. Four, that your book's not going to get destroyed while being slabbed. Five, that the mail carrier is going to bring the graded book back to you. Now, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, whether it's like in somebody's chat on Twitch or something like Mora Kyopa that talks about comic books a lot, or you've hung out on one of my new comic book day streams where I talk about comics and may have some thoughts about graded books, you'll know I don't really like grading books because I don't believe that whole 5-step trust process is going to work. I think the middle three, like the mail carriers, probably okay, but the middle 3 steps, I don't trust mysterious unknown persons with my book. All right? Well, there's also step 6. When you sell that book and it gets into somebody else's hands, what's that person do with it? And that's what this whole thing here is about. CGC admits hundreds of graded comics could be fraudulent after recent Amazing Spider-Man Mark Jeweller's fake comic scandal. There's a section down here. Let me highlight that. The gist of it is some YouTuber, Swaggle House, I think was his name, looked at like the book and looked at the book as like 2 different pictures of what should have been the same CGC number, the same book, and was like, this isn't the same book. In fact, the one that's labeled 9.8 here on sale, which recently sold for like 15 grand, who can, yeah, whatever. I was about to say something, I'm not going to say it, but like the book sold for a lot of money and it's not a 9.8. So, big investigation. I'm sure somebody's going to lose their job over this or get arrested over it or something. But what happened is, after being graded, somebody took the book out of the case, put another book into the case, and resold it. And then they probably sent that original book back for another grading. Isn't that amazing? It's almost like you can't trust people. So CGC is venting a lot of air here, a lot of hot air, saying, oh yeah, we exist to protect collectibles, we got a private investigator, lawyers, yada yada. We're going to conduct a comprehensive review of this incident and our processes, and to help ensure that this individual is held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. We've made improvements to our processes, like what? Like, it is entirely possible for there to be 2 identical copies of a comic book with the same damage or whatever. So if you're just like, this book looks exactly the same as this other one, that's no guarantee that they're the same book. Are you going to mark the books in some way and thus damage them? I mean, you are putting them in slabs, right? So who's ever going to open up the slab to know that you took a marker on page 5 and went swoosh with UV radiate, like a UV light or UV reactive ink or something? Like, I don't know. But this whole situation just kind of, I feel vindicated in not believing that CGC books are what they're advertised to be. Now, I realize this is probably a very small segment of the overall like graded comic world or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And that's fine. That's good. Thumbs up, guys. And I really like this closing line here. If you purchase one of the books that this individual tampered with, we'll ensure that you are compensated for losses arising from any failures in our services. We expect to share a list of books that we believe are impacted as soon as possible. Now, they'll share that list. It'll be probably like the CGC, the numbers, right? Like it'll be the number. Like, hey, graded book number 24601 or whatever is bad. And we're going to send you $50 or something. Like, what loss? What level of loss can they possibly compensate? Because if I bought this book for 15 grand, based on it being a 9.8, and I get it regraded and it's actually a 9.4 and not worth 15 grand, are you really going to cut me a check for $9,000 based on that difference? I doubt it. I really do. So kind of a crazy situation. And, let's click through. What do we got here? Oh, this is just the stuff quoted in the article. Okay, so there's really nothing new here. So that's a thing. All right, you all take care of yourselves. Don't trust people when they're selling you collectibles, man. Even if like the signature has a certificate of authenticity or whatever with it, like they could just forge that. Like I can type you up a certificate of authenticity for whatever it is you want. You want a certificate of authenticity saying that Elizibar signed that comic book when I clearly didn't? I can give you that. I will be happy to. Anyway, you all take care of yourselves. You have a great one. And just be wary, man. Especially on big purchases. Like, it's one thing to get ripped off to the tune of like $50. It's another to get ripped off to the tune of like $1,000 or $10,000 or $15,000. You all take care. Bye-bye.